Well, good morning, everybody. This is Sarah, the Real Simple Mama, and my dangerous feathered trio. And the video we have for you this morning was a request, which I really appreciate, and it is in regards to hurricane preparation. Hurricane season is June to November, and we've just gotten into that window now. And so I was asked, what do you do if you're kind of in that zone of the country where hurricanes are a concern? And so I've been racking my brain for the last week. I've thought of every suggestion that I can to help you, from just preventative, kind of getting towards a rainy season, what you can do and what you can keep in mind, as well as, hey, it looks like you might be in the path of a hurricane, if you will, and what you could do in that. So real quick, I had to show you guys, this is the aftermath of my son's birthday party. We always do our birthday parties here in the yard, but we had over 40 people here this past weekend. So, I mean, as you can look, it looks like, it was pretty ridiculous. And the funny thing is, and the reason I tell you is because the kids, and a lot of the kids that we had here, they've been here before, but they wanted to come into the chicken pen. So I literally stood there for like 30 minutes and brought kids in 2 at a time, and I would hold Lollipop, and they'd get to pet her, and they'd get to, look at the girls and stuff like that. But I started thinking, like, man, I need to charge money, or like, charge tickets or something, like, come pet a chicken, $5. Wouldn't that be fantastic? All right, so anyway, it's a quiet morning here. And so we're going to start talking about whether it's just rainy season or, again, if you're actually worried about hurricanes. The way I do my videos, if you're unfamiliar with my content, is I will basically tell you every suggestion that I could possibly think of. And of course, I leave it up to you to choose what would be right for you and for your situation, for your budget, for your time, etc., etc. So what we're going to do is just start with a little bit of basic information. And look at that bird. Lolly bird, what are you doing, girl? And then Daddy's going to talk to you guys like the whole time. And then we'll get into, like, here's just kind of some preventative, like, not a lot of effort, no expense type suggestions. And then we'll get into the extreme stuff at the end, like, oh crap, like there's actually, like, there may be an evacuation. What the hell do I do with my birds? So anytime you're worried about a coop or your chickens getting wet or anything like that, and I have this kind of staged to show you guys some stuff. I think of two different concerns. I think about, I don't want my chickens to be wet and cold. So as we get towards the end of hurricane season, that could be a problem. The other thing is I worry about their food. Now, I mean, if their bedding gets wet, then, well, that kind of sucks, but they'll be okay. And, if your coop leaks water a little bit, then yeah, that kind of sucks too, but that's one thing. It's another thing if their food gets wet. Now, one thing that has been taught to me is that if your chicken's free range, if they've got some zone where they can go out and forage, whether it's the entire yard or whether you've confined them, usually they have a pretty good discerning eye as far as, like, that looks like something I can eat. That looks like something that I can't eat, as far as whether it's food that's rotten or moldy, or it's something that's not even food at all, it's plastic, or something like that. Our house was actually renovated a couple of years ago, right before we bought it, and so we still find, like, construction crap and, like, just random junk out in the yard from when they just gutted the house. And our chickens, we've not had any scares yet. So again, if they're free ranging, then they should be able to tell, like, okay, this food is moldy, this food is wet, I'm not going to try to eat it. But you want to be really careful with their food. Now, you guys, in my other videos about coop hacks, and then I have a specific coop hack video that's for feeders and waterers. You guys have seen, what I ended up doing with my feeder, because my automatic feeder was working well, but every time it rained, water would just drip down from the outside and would just fill the entire cup with water. And of course, that means all of the food soaks it up, and so the food would be completely ruined, and the chickens would be looking at me like, lady, like, you're not doing your job here. So you've got to make sure that they have access to clean, dry food. So if that means you have just, one of those separate feeders that you can hang, and you put it somewhere way inside your coop to where it can't get wet, just thinking about that. But one of the major concerns is going to be, what are you doing with your food? Now, the other thing I'll mention right now, and I'll walk over here, when it comes to their food, is I'm not just talking about the food that is ready for them to consume, that you've got in the feeder. I mean the rest of your food also. And having, it's kind of like, what are you doing with the rest of the bag, okay? And there are a couple of different solutions. What I'm doing right now is not ideal, but it works pretty well. I guess I'm just, because I'm so cheap, I'm to the point where it's like, I don't want to buy anything else, so I'll just deal with this. So if you've got a storage unit, you need to be careful, especially with, like, hurricane type situations where it's the rain and the wind. that your storage unit doesn't have water coming in from here or from the sides or whatever. And here's why. And I'm going to leave this bag out because I have something else to show you later. These bags where your food comes in, this part is pretty waterproof, right? Because it's like the plastic type material and then the like paper inside. But the seams, that white seam, you know, where you have the little pull tag, there's one on the top, right, for you to pull open your food, but there's one on the bottom as well. And this part right here where the seam is, look at them, they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? This part right here will absorb water up into it, and I've had to get rid of, luckily the bag was almost empty, it's not this one, but there was another bag where the whole bottom of the bag, the food was just caked together, and it was like green. I mean, it was almost like this color, like a green blue, and I mean, I had to throw it away. It was molded, it was rotten. So I would say try to not have your bag directly on the ground or directly on the ground of the storage bin. If you can see in here, I mean, it's pretty messy right now, but inside this storage bin, I've also lined it with plastic bags just to kind of help water move out a little bit. That's probably not too helpful, actually, but what I think would be ideal is if you have a storage bin like this for, you know, all your other stuff. The pine shavings are in here, the PDZ, the grit, their treats, everything is in here. But if it's a bag that's not completely sealed and waterproof, maybe get one of those dog food containers, the ones that have like the locking lids. I think that would be a lot more protection. Or, I mean, you know, you could just keep your food inside somewhere, in a shed, in a garage, things like that. For me, with our situation with just 3 birds, I only have to buy a bag of food like once every month or two. We actually have to go this week. We're going to go buy them a whole bunch of stuff this week. So, but just be thinking about, you know, one of the main things is what's going on with their food. Are they going to be able to eat if it rains, or is their food going to be ruined and then they're starving until you get out there and clean it? Not only is that bad for your birds, of course, but their egg production will also completely shut down until their bodies get back into that regular routine. But the other thing is, what about the food that you're storing? What are you doing with that? What's your plan with that? Okay, so that's food. Some other pretty simple suggestions that I have for you in regards to, again, just being preventative. This isn't even necessarily like a hurricane thing. This is just like if it's rainy season, if where you are, it just rains a lot anyway because you're in that kind of temperate zone, you know, whatever the case may be. I have tried to build up, and I'm trying to not get my shadow in the shot, so I apologize. When we laid this coop out, and if you've seen my other videos, you already know this, our ground, as you can see, is very uneven, and we wanted the coop to be even because we didn't want it, you know, rocking back and forth, so we leveled it. And in order to level it, we had to put some bricks down underneath to level it. So really, the base of the coop is a little bit off the ground. That's a great idea if that's possible for you. Even if you put just like, I don't know, little wheels, or put it up on bricks or cinder blocks or something like that, just so that this wood on the base is not going to be just sitting on wet ground and rotting over time. Now, most people don't move their coops too often, you know, just unless it's like, you know, hey, they've completely destroyed this ground, I'm going to move it to give this ground a break and put them over there, you know, so they have some fresh clover or whatever. Obviously, that's a pain for lots of reasons, but even if you are not moving your coop, I do recommend, look at them racing down, you goofy birds. I do recommend building up the ground inside the coop and the run. Here's why. When it starts to rain, and if it's going to be a really bad rainy day, I recommend, I mean, you doing what you want. I normally tend to keep my birds locked up because they'll go stand out there in the rain, and I don't want them to get cold. You know, a lot of their feathers on the top are waterproof, but the ones down like by their vent and on their stomach, and then of course their feet on their legs are not waterproof. So I don't like them staying really wet, soggy birds because I'm afraid that they're going to get sick. Sounds ridiculous, but chickens are very, very sensitive to any kind of respiratory cold, infection, anything that has to do with respiratory. They're very sensitive to it. You can lose birds really quickly. So I'm just admiring them being ridiculous. So what I suggest is, especially if you're going to keep them locked up, I build up the ground inside the coop. And what that means is I'm trying to make the ground level in here higher than it is in here. And so that's, especially in my situation, because remember, this is technically not on the ground. If it starts to rain and water starts to gather, I want it gathering out here. I don't want it to gather in here. It'll take forever to dry, and then your birds can't really go anywhere to escape except just up in there to be dry. What, loudmouth? All day. All day. What do you want, you nosy birds? Jeez. So what I did is I bought, and you don't have to have like high quality dirt or anything like that. Just buy like topsoil, like the crappy stuff. But I mean, it took me probably, this is probably 200 pounds of dirt just for me to raise this whole zone by, I don't know, 3-4 inches. And if you can see, I didn't do a super great job because there's still some low parts. But what I wanted to do is almost mound this here inside. So if you start having standing water, it's not going to be going in here because the level of ground here is higher. So that's another easy thing I recommend. All right, for your coop. And I know a lot of you have got this coop or you've thought about it. I do have my review 1 year later. I have lots of videos about this coop. One of the things that it's just kind of like, well, it is what it is. Even if you seal and waterproof your coop or any coop, anywhere where there's a joint or there's an opening or there's wood that essentially, you know, can move. So all the way around this door, all the way around this window, that door there, etc., etc. If there's severe rain, severe weather, especially if there's wind, right? Because if there's wind, the rain's not just falling straight down. If it fell straight down, we'd be fine. It's when the wind is blowing it at an angle. Then you're going to be dealing with everything inside getting wet. Again, it's not going to be that much of an expense. It's just inconvenient. And if your birds are trying to hide from the rain, but even in here, there's water coming in, then they have nowhere to escape. They have nowhere to be dry. So what I recommend doing, and this seems kind of ridiculous, but if it works, then it's not stupid, right? Is, like I've been telling you, save all of these bags. I know that these little seams that I just talked about will leak water, but that's not what I'm talking about. Save any bag like this, a bag like this, cat litter bag, this is black oil, sunflower, any of these that are this thicker bag. Take a staple gun and staple these bags on top of all of these seams. So if it looks like we're going to be getting inclement weather, again, we're a couple of hours away from the Gulf of Mexico, so it may happen this season. I'm going to staple gun it with, like, you know, a staple gun that you would use for anything. And I staple up above here. I staple it all the way across on the top, but I don't staple the sides except maybe once or twice. Why? That's so you can get a couple of, like, chip clips. And when you want to open the windows again, or when you need to check the nesting boxes again, you don't have to rip all the staples out to access the doors and then staple it back up again. You just roll it up. I'm trying to do this with one hand, but essentially you'd roll the bag up, right, and clip it. Like in this case, I'd clip it to the roof. Do what I need to do, and then whoop, then fold it back down. And I would do that anywhere where you can tell that there's a weakness. I keep these bags up. These are those tall kitchen trash bags, and they fit these grids perfectly. But then I keep that around so that if there's wind blowing and there's rain, that hopefully, ideally, they've got a little dry spot down over here that just kind of blocks a little bit of it. But I mean, you could go all the way around. I know for me on this coop, at least on my particular one, this is the Innovation Pet Coop Kit. You've got this door and window here, but you've also got the drawer where the PDZ comes out. So, and there's a bird standing on it. Jeez, I was like, why is it so hard to move? There's a big fat bird sitting on it. So, you know, I would put a bag across there. I would staple it all the way across the top, and then I could roll it open. If there's a day where the weather's nice, I just clip it up to the roof. I can access that to clean it whenever I want to, and then that's it. I mean, hell, if you wanted to, you could staple a lot of this like all the way around and just leave like one side open. Your caution though, and this is something I was thinking, I couldn't sleep the other night, and I was laying like, what am I going to tell them about this? What you want to keep in mind though is you don't want to turn this into an oven. If it is hot where you are, then you can't just block up all of their air circulation and the ventilation and then be like, cool, well now it's going to get wet, and oh wait, crap, now I'm like cooking my birds in there. Now, coops, the way they normally have ventilation designed is it's normally up under the roof. So like there's a hole right here. Let me see if I can do this without them coming through. Oh, here they come. Up there above her head, there's an opening right there. On that horizontal piece, there's actually, there's like a big gap. You can't necessarily see it here with depth perception, but there's a big gap, and there's little gaps under the roof all along here, but it's not a lot. So if you block everything up, it's like, well, you solved one problem, but now you've created another. Now, I'll tell you, the ideas that I had were, of course, you could get a fan and put a fan in there for your birds. It doesn't need to be high. You know, you don't want to give them a chill, so it doesn't need to be super powerful. They do sell like battery operated fans, like for baby strollers. If there's a Toys R Us near you, Toys R Us is going out of business. Go see if you can find one. Go find one on Amazon. But they're just little clippy fans. But it's like, you know, it'll just spin, and you could put that in there instead. You know, you can you can think about something, but just keep in mind there's got to be some type of ventilation, not only for your birds to not get too hot, but you know, as they poop in there, that smell, the ammonia and stuff, you want to get that out of there as well. So that's just something for you to think about. So far, just to recap, we've talked about making sure their feeder and their extra food is kept dry. So number one, because you don't want them to eat it and then get ill and possibly pass away, but also you don't want to waste money. You want to think about blocking up your windows. Again, that's my cheap solution, either using your feed bags or getting trash bags and just stapling them around. Building up the dirt on the inside so it's higher than the ground around it, and then hopefully you won't get a ton of water going in there. So those are the easy solutions. All right, so let's talk about the more serious solutions. What if there's an evacuation? What are you going to do with your birds? So if you are having to leave the premises, do not leave your birds. I mean, I hope I don't have to say that. Like, people, you know, if at all possible in any kind of disaster situation, please do everything you can to not leave your animals. But of course, you can't just throw your chicken in a suitcase. I mean, I guess you could. You can't just throw your chicken in a suitcase or just throw them in your car or something like that. So what do? If it looks like the situation is just going to be too bad that they can't stay outside, my suggestion is to get a huge dog crate, or even not a dog crate, and move them into your garage. They will do okay if you give them something really tiny, whether it's, you know, a cookie sheet or a baking pan, or, you know, if you have trays for their snacks and stuff like that, throw some pine on that, give them like a little makeshift nesting box, and just get them out of, you know, this situation if it's going to be really bad. We had to do that last year when hurricane season was really bad. It was also, you know, our first year having chickens and them being outside. We did not know any of the waterproofing stuff that I just told you about with the coop. You know, we sealed it, but water was leaking in through here and through here. And I mean, everything inside was soaked, and they were just like, there's nowhere we can go to be dry. So we finally carried our chickens through the house and went and put them in the garage in a gigantic dog kennel, one that's for, like, you know, huge dogs. And we just threw the, you know, pine on the bottom, and we still had their chick feeder and their chick waterer. And I mean, they lived in there for like 5 days. And we left the light on, and we would go in and talk to them and play music for them and make sure they were okay. And it was weird. You know, they were kind of like, what the hell is going on? But they were safe, and they were dry, and they were warm. And I mean, to be honest, we got our eggs pretty much as normal. Like, they were like, okay, whatever, this is what we're doing. And then once we were sure that everything was good, you know, I had to take out all of the PDZ. I had to take out all of the pine, leave everything open once the weather was done, let everything dry out, bring all new bedding and all new everything in, and then we brought them back outside once their situation was back to normal. So if you don't have a big, huge kennel, I would suggest getting one. I mean, cat carriers and things like that are okay for transporting your birds, but if they're going to have to be somewhere for a while, you want to try to think about their comfort and their livability as well. If you end up having to evacuate, if it looks like that might be imminent, you know, go ahead and throw their chicken food and a bowl for water or something like that. Tons of bottled water, of course. The rest of your bag of pine shavings, anything you can think that your birds would need. Some bath towels, like old crappy towels, and then just grab your chickens and go. You know, if you need to use cat carriers, if you could put a dog crate in your back seat or something like that. But if you are in a zone where flooding happens, you might want to keep in the back of your mind, okay, if you know what starts to go down, if it starts to hit the fan, what are we going to do with the chickens? Please don't abandon them. Please don't leave them if it's at all possible. And I know, I mean, of course, sometimes people don't have a choice, so there's no judgment here, but hopefully I'm giving you some suggestions to where you can have that in the back of your mind, and you can be thinking about that to where they can go with you as well. Now, chickens will float, but I don't want you to wait around to see that come to fruition. So those are the things that I want you to keep in mind if you're worried about hurricanes. Is, you know, the number one thing is for hurricanes or for rain or whatever, is thinking about their food, thinking about making sure they don't stay wet, and especially wet and cold. How you can help protect the coop. Again, not only will it be convenient for you, but it'll probably end up saving you money if you don't have to replace all of that stuff, or, I mean, replace pieces of your coop if it rots, and oh my gosh, what a mess. So thinking about all of that, and as well, if you think you're going to be in a zone where you might have to evacuate, what are you going to do with your birds? If you ever have to deal with wild birds or anything like that, birds who aren't used to being handled, they always suggest that you wrap them up in a towel you know, your chickens, you can watch my video on how to pick up a chicken or how to hold a chicken, but essentially you just want to support their feet if you can and keep their wings close to their body like they are right now. You don't want their wings to be separated from, you know, from their body, because then they can get hurt. But just grab them, put them in a cat carrier, have somebody hold them in the car, wrapped in a towel, something like that. So I apologize that this video got kind of dark, but I want everybody to be thinking about what to do so that we could be proactive and so that we could be thinking about what to do for our birds. If you have other suggestions, things that have worked for you, things that you're thinking about, or wait, Sarah, what about this? Please, please, please put it in the comments. This is something that, like I said, I've been brainstorming for about a week. We did deal with, and you heard my experience, with some flooding problems last year. It wasn't really bad. It's more just our property and what part of town we're on. It certainly was not anything where the roads were undrivable or anything like that. But we had to kind of scramble to think of some stuff to save our birds and to not, you know, waste a couple $100s. So again, if you've got comments, questions, suggestions, drop them in the box below. I always respond really quickly. If you need help with any other situation, because this entire video came out of, you know, a request from a viewer, which I really appreciate. If there's anything else I can do to help, I'm learning right along with you. I care very much about my birds and about, you know, being the best chicken mama that I can be. So if you've got anything, drop it in the comments. You can send me an email. I'm themama@realsimplemama.com. And that's my trio of ridiculous birds, and we will be back soon with more content. Bye guys, and thank you.